Hi there, folks. This is the Practice Chapter 4 test, and as always, I am the amazing Mr. Jansen. That's where we go. If you look at the first one, we want to find all this stuff and then graph it. And the first thing we need to find is the vertex. When I'm in standard form like this, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. To find the vertex, I'm going to do the opposite of b over 2a. So the opposite of b is a negative 1 over 2 times a, which is a 1/2, which is a negative 1 over 1, which is a negative 1. So that's the x value for my vertex, is a negative 1. To find the y value, I have to plug that negative 1 back into the equation. So I've got 1/2 times negative 1 squared plus a negative 1 minus 4. So that's going to give me a 1/2 minus 1 minus 4, which looks like about a negative 4.5. And now the axis symmetry is always x equals, because it's the equation of a vertical line. And it's always x equals the x value from the vertex, which for this one happens to be a negative 1. So it's x equals a negative 1. The y-intercept, when I'm in standard form, the y-intercept is always the constant term. It's always the c value here, which is the negative 4. But also the y-intercept is when I plug a 0 in for x. And if I plug a 0 in for x here, I'm going to get a negative 4 out for y. Okay? It's going to be that constant term either way. The x-intercepts for this one, the x-intercepts, I'm going to plug a 0 in for y. So when I do that, I end up with x squared plus x minus 4. And I set that equal to 0. Okay, I'm plugging a 0 in for y. And now to solve this thing, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the fraction. I'm going to multiply everything by 2. And when I do that, it gives me an x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. And now I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to try to solve this by factoring. So I build a bridge and I get a negative 8. Two numbers that multiply together to give me a negative 8, but add together to give me a positive 2. It's going to be a positive 4 and a negative 2. So this one's going to factor into an x plus 4 and an x minus 2. And I can just set each factor equal to 0. That's how I solve by factoring. So I do the x plus 4 equals 0, and I also do the x minus 2 equals 0. I'm just using this extra space that I have over here. So I subtract the 4 from each side. I get x equals 4. Here I add the 2 to each side, and I get x equals 2. So my two x-intercepts, a negative 4. My two x-intercepts are a negative 4, 0, and a 2, 0. And I'm just going to go through and plot all of this stuff. I've got negative 1, negative 4.5 is right around here. The axis of symmetry is right here. The y-intercept at negative 4 is right here. I can reflect that point using my axis of symmetry. The x-intercepts at negative 4 and positive 2 are right here. And that's plenty of information to graph this thing. So now I'm going to draw the best parabola that I can draw. And that's it. Taking a look at number 2. Number 2, this is in y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. This is the format that this thing is in, and that's our vertex form. Remember, in vertex form, the vertex is pretty much given to us. Just keep in mind that there is a minus h here, and that minus value caused me to take the opposite of this guy. So it's going to be a negative 2, 4 for my vertex. Axis of symmetry is still x equals, and it's the x value from the vertex, which is the negative 2 this time. The y-intercept, I plug a 0 in for x. So this time I'm actually going to plug it in, negative 2 times 0 plus 2 squared plus 4. And I just have to simplify. That's going to give me a 2 squared inside the parentheses here. That's a negative 2 times 4, which is a negative 8 plus 4, which is a negative 4. Okay? So just be careful there. I plugged a 0 in for x, got a negative 4 out for y. And now my x-intercepts. My x-intercepts, I'm going to plug a 0 in for y again, so I get negative 2, x plus 2 squared plus 4 equals 0. And I'm going to solve this essentially using my square root property. I subtract the 4 from each side. So I get a negative 2 times x plus 2 squared equals a negative 4. And now I divide each side by that negative 2. Let me bring that up here. When I do that, I'm left with an x plus 2 squared equals 2. And now from here, I can just take the square root of each side. So I end up with an x plus 2 equals. Since I took the square root of each side, I have to do plus or minus this value. And now I subtract the 2 from each side. So I end up with x equals a negative 2 plus or minus root 2. And those are my exact solutions, the -2 plus or minus root 2. But that doesn't help me much if I'm going to put this thing on a number line, if I'm going to graph. So I'm also going to plug this into the calculator. And when I plug that in, it gives me a negative 0.6 approximately, comma 0 for one of my ordered pairs. When I do the -2 minus the root 2, it gives me a negative 3.4, comma 0. Okay? And really, I've done that so that I can make sure that this fits in terms of my graph. So now when I put this on the graph, -2, 4 is right here. The axis of symmetry at x equals 2, or x equals -2 rather, is right here. The y-intercept down here at -4 is right here, and I can reflect that point over to the other side. And now my x-intercepts at a -0.6 is going to be right around here somewhere. A -3.4 is going to be right around here somewhere. And I can see that those are symmetrical to one another, which means this makes sense in terms of my parabola. So now I draw the best parabola that I can draw. And that's it. Okay? Take a look at number 3. Number 3 is asking me about the x-intercepts of a certain quadratic, and it wants to know what it can tell me about the graph. So if I'm taking this quadratic and I want to talk about the x-intercepts, let's find the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts, I plug a 0 in for y. And I'm going to solve this for x. To solve this for x, I subtract the 4 from each side. X squared equals a -4. I take the square root of each side. Remember, when I take the square root, I have to do plus or minus. And now the square root of a -4, square root of 4 is 2. The square root of a negative is I. So I get two imaginary numbers here. And the point here is to remind us that if we get imaginary solutions, this graph is not going to cross the x-axis. This one does not cross the x-axis. Okay, imaginary solutions, complex solutions, just that. They're imaginary. So on the real number plane, these things are not going to cross the x-axis. And that's what that tells me. Okay? And number 4, we want to write the equation of the parabola whose vertex is 2, 1 and passes through the point 3, 5. And for this one, I'm just going to write it in vertex form, just because that's the easiest thing to do. All right. So the two things I need in vertex form are the vertex and the a value. The vertex is 2, 1, that's given to me. And then the a value, I'm just going to plug this into a fresh equation, just like I did with linear equations. I plug it into a fresh y equals mx plus b. Well, this time I'm going to plug it into a fresh y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. A is the thing I'm looking for, and I'm just going to plug everything else in. The vertex right here is hk, so I can plug the 2 in for h, the 1 in for k. And then the ordered pair that's given is the x and the y that I'm going to use. So I plug the 5 in here and the 3 in here. So I get 5 equals a times 1 squared plus 1. So I've got 5 equals a plus 1. I subtract the 1 from each side and find out that a equals 4. So now to write the equation, I just say y equals 4 times x minus h, which is the 2 squared plus k. And that's it. Okay, just plugging it right back in. In number 5, it says a ball is thrown, and we've got this equation that models this thing. And I think that's a little off. This should be a 50. There we go. Let me fix that. So when we, oh, and here's another typo. That should be a 64. Don't worry, I'll make sure I fix those on your quiz or on your practice test. So when we do this, I'm just going to find the maximum height here. So really what it's asking me to find is the vertex. So I want to find the vertex for this one. So I do the opposite of b over 2a, which is a negative 64 over a negative 32, which gives me a 2. That's the x value for my vertex. And now I just need to plug it back in and find the y value. So I do a negative 16 times 2 squared plus 64 times 2 plus 50. And really, I can just plug this into my calculator. Be careful, especially right here at this first step. You want to do 2 squared, which is 4, then multiply it by the negative 16, which is a negative 64, before you add the 128 plus the 50, which is going to give me a 64 plus 50, which is 114. Okay? And now I just need to interpret this thing. This is my time, and this one is my height. which means the thing it's asking for is the height. So I'm just going to say 114 feet. And that's it. Number 6, we're selling slices of pie here. And it says, last year I sold 300 slices of pie at $5 apiece. It's projected for every $2 increase in price, I'll sell 20 less. And I want to maximize my profits here. So X is going to be the number of increases to the price. And now the two things that I really need here, I need the price, which remember the price was $5. But I'm going to add to that price $2 increments, so 2x. Okay? And then I also need to know how many I'm going to sell, so the number sold. So what I do here for the number sold, last year it was 300. And I'm going to subtract from that because I'm losing customers now. And I'm going to lose 20 for every increase in price. So I'm going to subtract 20x. And now to figure out how much money I'm going to make, I'm going to take these two binomials. I'm just going to multiply them. I multiply the price by how many sold, and that'll give me my profit. So essentially I need to FOIL or distribute here. That's going to give me a 1500 minus 100x plus 600x minus 40x squared. So now I combine like terms. I rearrange this, negative 40x squared plus 500x plus 1,500. And that's how much money I'm going to be making, but it wants me to maximize that. Essentially, it's asking me to find the vertex again, so I do the opposite of b over 2a one more time. That's a negative 500 over 2 times a negative 40. It's negative 500 over a negative 80, which I'm just going to simplify this. I'm going to plug it into my calculator. So it gives me about 6.25. So what it's telling me is that I should raise the price 6.25 times. If I'm just looking for the price here, well, the price was this, 5 plus 2 times x, which is 6.25. So I plug it in, that's 5 plus 12.5. In other words, I should be selling these for $17.50. And that's it. That's all it asks for. I don't need to plug the vertex back in to get the profit. It just asks me how much should I sell them for, and the answer is $17.50. Okay?